Hey guys, today we're going to talk about working with yoga teacher burnout. This has been a hot topic in my Facebook group the last week or so, and so I wanted to make this video and dive into some of your questions with a little bit more depth. I've got a 3-hour workshop that I teach in person on this topic, so I'm going to pull from some of the content that I teach there for today's video. And you actually may want to participate. I've got some journaling prompts for you, so you may want to hit pause, grab your journal or a piece of paper so you can take some notes. First, let me just give you a list of some of the reasons that I think that yoga teachers get burned out so easily. And so you can make notes about these, and if I leave any out, I'd love for you to write them down and then pop into the Facebook group and share that. So one is, I think that we get burned out sometimes because we're not making time for our own practice. This is something I hear from teachers all the time. Once they started teaching, their lives became so full and so busy, and yoga became more of a job and less of a hobby or less of their own spiritual practice, and they weren't making time for their own practice anymore. So we'll address a little bit of that. And I think also this is going to be a series. It'll be at least one other video besides today, maybe a third, we'll see. So if it doesn't get addressed today, then it'll get addressed in the next few weeks. So not making time for our own practice. I think sometimes yoga teachers run into this or get stuck in this trap of feeling like our own practice is supposed to be an hour of kind of classic, maybe even challenging asana. And let me just say this right now, in my opinion, that is not, I don't think there's any reason that just because we're a yoga teacher means we need to be practicing an hour of asana a day. In fact, I think that there's very few bodies that actually need that. Another reason that yoga teachers get burned out is because we're not staying firm in our own boundaries. Like we let clients late cancel without paying, and so we have this hole in our schedule we were saving for somebody and we don't get paid for it. Also, yoga teachers often will keep classes on our schedule that aren't good for us anymore. We kind of let schedule drama get the best of us, and we're going to talk a bit about that today. Another thing that happens is we don't know anymore what fills or inspires us, or we do know what inspires us and we're not making time for it. Another reason that yoga teachers get burned out is because we have to constantly we think we have to constantly come up with brand new things to teach. Spoiler alert, I don't think we do. Another reason that teachers get burned out, it's a long list, right? is that we're in a conflicted relationship with ourselves and we're being too hard on ourselves. This is something I've been working with my whole life. I feel like in this year, 2018, I'm kind of stepping into that work with even more depth. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Another reason yoga teachers get burned out is that we're maybe teaching at studios that don't respect us or don't pay us well. That's my list. Are there more? And someone in my Facebook group, I think it was Kim, said so beautifully, a lot other people may have jobs where if they're not feeling 100% or they're not all in, they can show up still and kind of go through the motions and phone it in, and that's good enough for the kind of work that they do. But because our job is presence, 100% of our presence and love and attention is really needed to be good at it. So it's even more important that we're able to really show up from a full place. It's no doubt that it's hard. I think this is hard for everybody, and I think it stays hard throughout our career. So that's not to be discouraging. That's just to say, like, this is something we're always going to be working with and working on. There's no point and I might talk about this a little bit when I answer one of the questions, there's no point at which I've got it. I'm never burned out. My schedule's perfect. Everything is easy. I just don't think that we get to an end place. And that makes sense, right? You know that intuitively. So for some journaling, as we're thinking about the schedule, which is what I want to focus on in today's video, I want you to do a little bit of journaling. So my first question for you is, what does your current schedule look like? You can write down literally everything. So all of your teaching, all of your family obligations, if you do other paid work, what that looks like, all the unpaid work that you do to keep your household running, write it all down and write out a daily and weekly schedule for yourself and really look at it. Don't leave anything out. Sometimes just looking at that and seeing how much you actually have on your plate will help clarify why you're burned out. Make a list of some things that you'd like to have time for, but you don't. So just write down whether it's more sleep, whether it's more time with girlfriends, whether it is more time on your mat. Write down a list of whatever it is and just put it to the side. And then what I want you to do, so this takes time. This is why when I teach it in person, this is a 3-hour workshop. Write out your ideal weekly schedule. And then I want you to do some journaling and some processing and maybe some talking with some friends about what's preventing you from having your ideal schedule. And I'll just say that it can really take a long time to move closer to your ideal schedule. So, I've been teaching for 13 years and I'm really at almost an absolutely perfect ideal schedule right now. But it took a really long time to get there. So it's not an overnight thing. But if you have an idea of where you're headed, I think it makes it easier to make choices that direct you towards that place. So some things to think about when we're thinking about scheduling. One would be to take off your calendar, take off your schedule, classes or teaching opportunities that aren't a good fit anymore. So I have this formula. I want you, if you've got a class on your calendar, I want you to be able to say a resounding yes to 4 of these 8 requirements. At least 4 have to be a yes for you to keep teaching this class. One is, and this is often surprising to people, this class is incredibly challenging and I'm learning so much. I think the more challenging teaching situations we put ourselves in, the better we become as teachers. So if you're in a class that's hard for you to teach, I think you should try to keep that on your schedule. That's unconventional advice, but that's my advice. So that's one. Another one is I love the students in this class. Number 3 is this class pays so well. Number 4 is I love the material I get to teach in this class. Number 5 is I'm making great contacts for private clients or workshop participants or retreat participants in this class. So I'm using this group class as a form of marketing for my other services. I love the studio space and the studio owners that run this class. Number 8 is teaching this class is a Seva offering that really fills my heart. So those are 8 things. You should be able to say yes to at least 4 of those to keep teaching a class. So that's just something for you to think about. And I actually have a podcast all about schedule drama that goes into all of this with a lot more depth and also takes a sort of counterpoint. Because in addition to giving up classes that are not good for you anymore, I also make the point that I think a lot of teachers don't give classes enough time to build before giving up on them. So you should go listen to the podcast if you have any schedule drama in your life right now. Some other things to think about if schedule drama is what's causing you to burn out. Another would be to schedule off, this is a rule, schedule off 1 whole day a week, period. And work towards having 2 days off. I would say bonus points if those 2 days off are next to each other. And this is the last piece of advice I'll give about schedule drama and burnout is to get more sleep. And what that means, having a whole day off and getting more sleep and prioritizing maybe some of the pieces of self-care, which we'll talk about in the next video. It may just mean that you can't hustle as much as you're hustling right now. So let me answer. I've got 2 questions from the Facebook group that I want to answer directly, and then I'll see if I want to add anything on. So I think this was Jessica that asked this question. She said, my questions are around burnout when building. I'm still developing my teaching and trying to grow to full time, so I don't have a ton of control over scheduling. She's taking on as many classes as she can. And she said she doesn't have a lot of control over money boundaries. We should talk about that more, Jess. She says she's trying really hard not to frame it in her head as when I arrive at the full, perfect teaching schedule, I'll be happy and not burned out. And using that as an excuse to justify the self-sacrifice feelings that she's having right now. So this is a really great question. And because this is what I'll say is, as a newer teacher, there is a certain amount of hustle where you're taking on as many teaching opportunities as you can, where you're squeezing classes into the schedule, especially if you're trying to move towards full-time teaching. You may have to overpack your schedule a little bit. But so I will say that I absolutely did that when I was a new teacher. I had no choice. I was using my yoga teaching to support myself in New York City. It's not a cheap place to pay rent and to buy food. So I had no choice but to really take on a lot and teach, a less than ideal schedule. I taught at 7 in the morning. I taught at 8 o'clock at night. I taught on Saturdays, so I absolutely did that. And I whittled down when and how I could. But if you find that you've hustled so much, you've overpacked yourself so much that you're really feeling burnt out, you may be hustling a little bit too much and you may have to just pull back. And there's a real balance here between gathering as much as you can and overdoing it. And so if you find yourself not excited to teach, really exhausted, absolutely no time to take care of yourself, you've overdone it. And you may need to cut a class or two, or you may need to say no to the next teaching opportunity. And that may mean that your teaching career grows a little bit more slowly, and that's probably a good thing. So Jessica, let me know if that lands. Anybody else that is in a similar situation, let me know if that lands and what other questions you have. On a similar note, I think this was Diane. I should have written your names down. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure this was Diane. She said, I'm a new teacher, 1.5 years, and she's been dealing with some serious schedule drama. She still works part-time as a nurse, and she's trying to make this yoga teaching thing work, even though her heart is not working in nursing field at all anymore. She's trying to balance teaching at least one group class daily, teaching some one-on-ones at a local physical therapy studio. Clients cancel a lot there. That's really hard, and I really hope you're getting paid if clients cancel at the last minute. And she's working from home in her nursery job. Are you babysitting? That must be what that is. Oh, that's fun. So she says now she's trying to add a couple of group classes and build a private teaching schedule in her home studio. That's exciting. Trying to figure this out on a weekly basis has my mind in a whirlwind. Okay. Yeah, so this, I totally understand that. You've got all these pieces completely all over the place floating around. You're trying to it's like Tetris. It's like constantly playing Tetris with your schedule. It can be so intellectually and emotionally and even physically draining. So one thing I would do is try to have as much as you can that's the same week to week. It'll be sometimes all over the place and kind of crazy, throughout the day and throughout the week. But if it's the same week to week, even if it's very different day to day, you will start to get in a little bit more of a rhythm. That scheduled Tetris is part of the job, but the more things that you have that are standing, the better. So if you've got 1 or 2 group classes at a yoga studio that are always the same, maybe rather than taking on private clients at that PT place that cancel all the time, maybe add another group class just because it's regular. I think with this balance, for both Jessica and Diane who are asking these questions about schedule, this is sort of an analogy I want to use. When a student is new to the physical practice of yoga, and one of the things they're struggling with or they're working on is their balance, in terms of standing on one foot, etc., that kind of balance. This is what I see, and I'm sure you see this too. The movements, of their foot or of their whole body are big, and they're maybe even more prone to falling over. And when I see them kind of tense up and try to make themselves completely still, that doesn't help either. So what I always tell people, and I'll say this to you guys now, even though you know this, balance is dynamic. It's not static. So you don't, Jessica, you're not going to get to the perfect steady schedule and have no change or not be burned out anymore. That's not what's going to happen. And same thing for you, Diane. You're always going to be playing a little bit of this schedule Tetris. I just feel like it's part of our job. But when you're newer at it, the swings, the ups and the downs, the changes, they're bigger. And what starts to happen as we get stronger in the muscles in our feet and our ankles and our lower leg and our hip stabilizers, just as we get more regular and more steady and stronger in our teaching selves, the wild variations get smaller. So that will get a little bit easier. The big changes in your schedule will start to kind of come in a little bit tighter and come in a little bit closer. Just the way when now, as you guys have been practicing yoga for a long time, maybe tree pose is something that used to be like, oh, and now you look a lot more steady, even though there's that constant movement in the foot and ankle. It's the same, I think, for our yoga teaching schedule. There will still be changes, but they'll be a little bit closer to the center and they'll throw us off a little bit less. So in the meantime, if you're overdoing it, if you're over hustling, you've got to just pull in. You've got to pull into your center and not spread yourself so thin. And this is what we're going to talk about in the next video. There's a lot of ways to include really deep, meaningful self-care in a way that is not extremely time consuming. And so I think I'll just save that. I'll just save that little part of the lecture for next time. So let me know if any of these journaling prompts have helped you, what you're thinking about in terms of schedule drama and the way that's affecting your level of burnout. And I'm here to help you. So I can't wait to chat more. Bye for now.